Filming this in early March 2020, these are days of social distancing, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who has canceled game night last week and will have to cancel many more game nights. I'm also spending extra time at home with my kids because their school is closed. So in my gaming practices and in my future videos, I'm going to give emphasis to games you can play with your family or to games that are solitaire or soloable in case, again, your friends are not around to play them. In particular, also I want to give emphasis to print and play games, which are games that I really enjoy, and this way you don't even have to get out of the house to get them to make a copy in case, well, you have a printer at home. Today we're going to talk about Mephisto, which is a free print and play game. It is a card game, so you can print all of the components. It is primarily for 2 players, but you can also play with more, but I only play with 2. I only play with 2 with my daughter Amelia, who is now 9. In Mephisto, you made a pact with a demon. I mean, who else do you make pacts with? All the other pacts are just not as interesting. So the demon is going to make you immortal. You never die in this game. But in exchange for that little favor, you're going to go down a dungeon and slaughter monsters and capture their souls to feed them to the demon. That doesn't sound like a bad deal, actually. During the game, you will have a number of favor points. It can never be less than 0 or more than 10. And here you have a tracker. I mounted on a piece of cardboard I made out of a cereal box. And then I placed this other cardboard player aid with the icons for the game on top. And then I simply use that to keep track of how much favor the characters have. All of the other components in the game are play cards, which I didn't feel like mounting on individual pieces of cardboard, so what I did, I simply cut them out and then I placed them in sleeves, in card sleeves, and it works perfectly well. So we have a deck of dungeon cards. All of these cards go in a single deck. You shuffle it at the beginning of the game. You shuffle it probably better than me. I'm not one of the greatest shufflers of cards of our generation, of our age. And so after you shuffle it, you take 6 cards. You put 6 cards face up, organized in 3 lanes. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. This is very important. These areas count as separated from one another in game terms. Then each player draws 3 cards from the deck, and that forms their starting hand. Now, during your turn, at the beginning of your turn, you'll get to draw a card. Then you'll get to play as many cards as you want and can, and then you'll get to perform an action. The general idea is that you're trying to make yourself strong to defeat monsters. Monsters will give you a certain number of soul points. Now there's a rule book that comes, a small rule book comes with the print and play. There's another version on the website of the designer, and they say slightly different things about victory conditions. One says that you play until you go through the entire deck, and at that point the player who has the most soul points wins the game. And the other says that you play until a player has 15 points. Do whatever you want. Do whichever. So, when you play cards, some cards may have a cost here. Just so happen these are 0, but suppose that actually that was my starting hand. To play a card that has a cost, I need to discard another card. It's as simple as that. To play this one, I discard another card, and I decide to discard that one. When I play a card, I play it on my side in one of the 3 sections of the dungeon. My opponent is sitting on the other side, and they will play them in the sections of the dungeon on their side. Each section, each lane of the dungeon can have up to 2 cards. When I place an item, a weapon, I simply place it there, and for now it stays there and doesn't do anything, unless the text tells me that it does something. When I play a spell, I play it, I resolve the effect, and then I simply remove it. And so I'll do these things that will allow me to draw extra cards, to move cards around, etc, etc, etc. After I'm done playing cards, and suppose that then later I place a stew here. That's funny. I place a hook shot, and so on and so forth. Now, After I play the cards that I want to play, it's time for me to perform one action. There are 3 possible actions, which are loot, fight, and summon. Loot is very simple. You draw 1 non-monster card from the dungeon or the top of the deck, and you put it into your hand. And I want to put this card into my hand, and then at the end of the turn, I replace that. Very simple. Another action I can do is to summon, because when you have monsters in your hand, it doesn't look like they do much unless, well, you summon them. With the summon action, you get to swap a monster card in your hand with any card in the dungeon. And suppose I summon a monster there and I get that card instead. I could actually even swap a monster for another monster in case that gives me advantages in other ways. And after you swap a monster in your hand with a card in the dungeon, you also gain 3 favor. So that is not bad. That is not bad at all. I kept the fighting action for last because it's the most, well, interesting. It really is the heart of the game. When you declare the fight action, you choose a lane and you choose any amount of monsters in that lane. Say, I choose this lane and I'm attacking both. This is their combat strength that I need to match or exceed with the combat strength of my weapons. And so in this case, that's good. 9 and that's 7. So I get to destroy those 2 monsters and I put them in my scoring pile, and they will give me soul points at the end of the game. I may choose to attack only one of them, for example. Now, weapons have a certain number of we call it charges, it's called durability. So when I place the card, I put it sort of standing this way with the highest durability number in the top right corner. And then when I use it, I turn it by 90 degrees. So that is the actual and present number of charges I still have. And then like that. And then if I use it again, it is discarded. And I may have then other cards that recharge or add durability to my cards. I may have cards that reduce the durability of items of the opponent. And then again, a lot of other stuff may happen when you activate these weapons, as you can see just from some of the effects. And that's why, for example, you can take, you can summon, let's say you can switch monsters around with the summon action because maybe I don't want you to get a certain monster and I'm preparing the lane because then I want to attack, I'm making it possible for me to attack the lane, and otherwise maybe I wouldn't be able to. So this is the general idea. I'll just show you some of the cards. Remember, each turn you play as many cards as you draw a card at the beginning, then you play as many cards as you can and want. Then you either loot, take a card from the dungeon, summon, swap a monster in your hand with a card in the dungeon and gain 3 favor, or fight. Oh, all important, of course, what is favor for? You can add favor to your attack. So suppose that I was attacking that monster that has 10 with my Bloodthirster that only has 4, I could spend 6 favor to add to my attack, and that's what favor does. You add it to your attacks to, well, attack even more. And this is how you play Mephisto. So, Mephisto, very inexpensive game. If you get the free print and play version and you build your own copy, then you may want to add those leaves, but again, that's not going to be very expensive. The entire game fits inside a sandwich bag, so it's also very portable. And it was just fun to cut the cards and sleep them with my daughters. So these days, and my daughters are at home, the school is closed. Building print and play games actually is part of the fun because that keeps them busy for longer than just playing a game. So there's that other angle there to consider about print and play games. In general, this is an entertaining game. Not super deep and with a lot of randomness, but actually in truth with just enough decisions there to make, with just enough things that you can build up with enough game effects. I play this card so I can move that one, allows me to do something else. I discard this other card and so on and so forth. And then I can finally use my things. I created the synergy pays off. So fun, a simple light game, but it's fun. The art is also fun, it's amusing, it's simplified, it's cartoonish, but yet it still has that sense of of dungeon crawling, which is a theme that I like very much. I gotta tell you, if it wasn't because it's in the description and because of all of the conventions, of the genre, I do not know that I would know this is a dungeon crawling. I don't know if from the game I would think of this as dungeon crawler, because you don't really have any sense of spatial exploration, because you build up things slowly in front of something that you know perfectly well. So it has a fantasy theme. To me, actually, it feels more, it would make more sense to think of it as a fantasy arena, but it's secondary. The mechanics are fun. The mechanics are interesting. There is just enough indirect interaction that you feel that you're playing a multiplayer game, not a solo or multiplayer solo, but at the same time it doesn't get too confrontational, too in your face. Yes, I'm killing a monster because I don't want you to kill it, because I see that you have a great opportunity there. Yes, I'm summoning a monster to take one out because I don't want you to take it, but you never attack the opponent directly. So that's great. There's no player elimination, there is no character, there's no hero elimination. That is, your hero will never die, may get stuck a little bit when you don't have enough favor, but then you can perform actions to also build a little bit of that to replenish that resource. Again, the most confrontational things are actions that allow you to force the opponent to lose some of the durability of their items. Maybe you clear a lane entirely that you knew the opponent wanted to use. Not big stuff, but again, enough to make it interactive, not too much to create bad blood. And especially when you're playing with a child, that can be important. It's a fun and simple game. It's fun to discover the effects. It's fun to discover the synergies. It's fun to kill those monsters. Also, some of those monsters, when you kill them, then you place them in your score area, and they have effects that you can also trigger. So that also adds to the interest, because there are more things, more advantages that you can benefit from. And actually, in that sense, the game also has a little bit of a engine building. Not so much for the cards, because you play their two great weapons, but the durability will force you to discard them at some point. But those monsters that you place there may give advantages, say every time you discard a spell or every time you discard a monster. And so that is something more permanent that may create more of a curve, may give you more of an advantage. But again, not to the point that it becomes game breaking, not to the point that per se the little bit of an engine that you may have there will cause a runaway leader per se, intrinsically. So, Mephisto, especially for a game that I didn't pay for, especially for a free game that came out of my printer, almost like Aladdin's lamp to me. Still, print and play games still have a little bit of that magical quality. Definitely a good game, something you can play with your children, something you can play with your friends, but better these days, play with your family members, not with people from outside of your household, because let's try to limit contact with other people. So fun, enjoyable, play with your children, play with your spouse, play with your friends, and you can get it without leaving your house. It may just be a great game for the weird times that we are entering. Mephisto, fun, give it a try. I enjoyed it.